Motorola's best smartphone for 2017 is a thin, classy-looking handheld with a long-lasting battery. It's compatible with Moto Mod accessories and sold at a fair price. That phone is the Moto Z2 Play, which I reviewed several weeks ago. Its newer sibling is the Moto Z2 Force, and it's a much better deal for the wireless carriers than it is for you. If you're a spec sheet shopper who bases buying decisions on the numbers, maybe you're puzzled by my preference for the mid-range Motorola. After all, the Z2 Force brings a cutting-edge 835 processor and Quad HD display, neither of which are present on the Z2 Play. But I'm still convinced that at 5.5 inches, most normal folks can't tell the difference between Full HD and 2K, and Motorola did such a good job tuning the performance in the Z2 Play that I would have no problems whatsoever using it as a daily driver, especially given how well its predecessor aged. So I don't see the Snapdragon 835 as a particularly compelling argument for this phone either. It should make the carriers happy though, since the 835's modem supports a few network-friendly features the cheaper ones do not. I was more concerned with the decision to go with a battery smaller than every other flagship Android of 2017, and after a week of testing, I'm sorry to report that that concern was justified. While most of the competition can see me through a 14 to 16-hour day, the Z2 Force is an 8 to 10-hour phone for me, and I'm doubtful that any amount of optimization can overcome this combination of a flagship spec set and a small battery. If you buy this phone and spend any length of time away from a charger, you basically need the $80 Turbo Power battery pack to go with it. Great for the carrier that sells it to you, though. Part of the reason Motorola slimmed down the internal battery was to accommodate the Shatter Shield display. And if there's anything that's going to sell this phone, apart from the Moto Mods, Shatter Shield is it. It delivers on its promises. I saw review devices absolutely brutalized at the launch event and afterward, and it's genuinely impressive to see how well it withstands impacts. But it accomplishes this by trading the typical brittle glass for soft plastic. As a result, the top layer shows warping and visual distortions, and more damning, it's extremely scratch-prone. There's a feature in the Moto software that lets you silence the phone by placing it face down on a tabletop. But I've never used it on this phone because I'm too worried about the soft plastic being scratched up by toast crumbs or whatever. Motorola recommends buying a third-party screen protector, which I'm sure your carrier will be happy to provide for a fee. In brighter news, the software is as awesome as ever. Almost every feature Motorola has added is a useful addition that Android itself doesn't provide. I've gone into detail on this in earlier Motorola reviews, from the simple gestures to activate key features, to the small but super useful conveniences. So I'll just say that this is the best version of Android you can find outside of the Pixel and OnePlus 5. Around back, the phone has sprouted a second camera with the same resolution as the primary, but the lack of color filters on that sidecar means it can kick out monochrome photos with more sharpness, clarity, and depth than just slapping a black and white filter on an existing photo. The added depth information also allows for a portrait mode on this camera, which artificially blurs the background to make the subject pop. I don't like portrait mode on this phone any better than I like it on any other Android. There are stitching errors galore, and it's little more than a toy. But pair it with the Moto Depth Editor, and it becomes a pretty fun toy. Mostly, I was happiest when shooting standard photos and video with the phone, which have a bit more saturation than I'm used to seeing from Motorola. The typical complaints about low-light photography hold firm, and there's more digital noise in sky shots than I generally like to see, but, well, these are issues with almost every phone out there. And not every front-facing phone camera has a front-facing flash, something you'll appreciate if you take a lot of nighttime selfies. My two biggest complaints about this shooter are the lack of optical stabilization and a bit of a lag between hitting the shutter button and actually getting the capture. There's a software update landing post-launch that'll hopefully tweak that latter issue and hopefully improve that electronic stabilization a little bit, but even if it doesn't, this camera will serve the vast majority of folks just fine. Everything else is the same as on the Z2 Play, from the too quiet front-facing speakerphone to the call quality, which is just fine on T-Mobile US. So let's spend a second touching on the latest Moto Mod. On the plus side, I love that it's stick it and click it. You slap it on there and start using it right in the main viewfinder. Ultra-wide-angle photos and video, tiny planets, live streaming to Facebook coming soon. It's a 360 camera mod, and it's a lot of fun. But it's also a lot of money, $300. And it doesn't bring any spare battery capacity, even though it has the room for it. And it's not as widely compatible as the Gear 360 from Samsung, which is also much cheaper. The last time Motorola made an overpriced mod with this many compromises, well, it ended up giving them away for free a year later. That's a snarky way of saying you get a free projector mod when you buy this phone, which is cool. But this phone really needs a turbo power mod a lot more than a projector. And it would also be nice to see the 30-watt charger that came with last year's Force. This year's is a pokey 15 watts. And that complimentary style shell from last year, well, that's gone too. All this corner cutting to produce a phone that Motorola wants to charge you $720 for the privilege of owning. If I were buying a Moto Z this year, I'd make it the Z2 Play. You'll save at least $200. The sacrifices you make in processor and camera will not be noticeable to most folks, and is still compatible with all the mods that make owning one of these so genuinely fun. Unless you really need Shatter Shield, or you can pick it up for a song, there are better phones in the class than the Moto Z2 Force. Learn more about the siblings and the mods mentioned in this video by checking out the MrMobile on YouTube, and please subscribe so you don't miss more mobile tech video landing every week. Till next time, thanks for watching, and stay mobile, my friends.